Hello, and welcome to our another episode of the Mosaic film series. And today we are going to discuss The Host, a Korean movie. Came out in 2006. Wait for it. The director is Bong Joon-ho, who is very, very popular. In so many ways, an iconic figure, winning an Oscar this year, as we're talking about 2020, but 2019 Parasite, now everybody in the world knows about that film. What a breakthrough for a Korean film to get into the Oscar stage and win that award. But before Parasite was The Host and many other movies made by Bong Joon-ho. Incredible filmmaker, and I always like in the Parasite, there is a socio cultural satire to the Korean life and the economic systems of Korea and even the political system of Korea. He kind of uses very subtle way of critiquing it through the movies, which apparently have nothing to do with it. That's the cleverness of this director. Always appreciate. Now, this movie can be considered as a monster film, like the Godzilla or Jurassic Park and all that genre. But in reality, the movie is more about many other stuff, which we'll be talking about a little more. But let's start with the monster aspect of it. So, essentially, it's a story of a monster being, and I'm trying to say it without giving any spoiler alert, a monster being created in the Han River, which is, Korea's iconic river, and when we talk about monster, like I just alluded to Godzilla. Godzilla was not just a monster. It had these innuendos to the war and the nuclear war, and that's the birth of Godzilla. So in a way, monster is of our own making. And even in this movie, the monster is not just about the special effect. It's not just about that thing, but I would say the beginning of the monster itself, the opening scene is where the American scientists basically, I think 200 big bottles of
Formalin.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
formalin
formalin.
to Han River and the pollution, and
Yes.
eventually that's what causes. So in a way, the monster has more meaning. The monster could be America, and the monster could be the whole Western world. In what were your reading on that, Jin? And my fellow movie expert and enthusiast.
um, I think I see it as well. Certainly in this film, America is kind of this antagonist. It seems that is the antagonist that give birth to this monster in the Han River. But I feel like in a way the director is trying to tell the audience that, well, not necessarily the antagonist may give a push for the birth of this monster, but the conception of this monster is not really a foreign word. It's not
That's
foreign
right.
born. It's,
Yeah.
it's actually native. Well, see, when we watch the film, the whole process really we see a lot of I guess corruptedness in existing the current Korean society.
Oh yeah,
The
there's
peop-
as much
yeah, there are a lot
criticism,
of
internal
yes,
criticism.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. So I think that I guess this is my own guessing from a director's perspective. I think he intends to show the audience, especially the Korean audience, where to look to the root of for the root of the problem. So America, the U.S. here, in essentially just as like a little trigger to see a broader
Yeah,
picture.
yeah.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the internal, the way of the Korean government deals with the crisis, also there is enough jabs being taken. In the doctors are inept, and the bureaucrats are not listening to
Yes.
people's voice, and they are completely unprepared to handle this kind of crisis. And
Yeah.
and having a little more knowledge about the Korean socio-cultural background than I do, Jin. What would be your take on it? How is it more of a Korean film? Like, how does it embody the identity of Korea in so many ways? Because that's what our interest in the Mosaic series is, not just watching another movie, but to understand culture and to understand the story of the other. That's the idea of the Mosaic film series. This is not a movie review per se, but it's also that learning part. So how would you see Korea through the eyes
Lens.
of the host? Yeah, through
Right.
the lens of the host. Yes.
Well, I think the first very important thing is that I think the movie really give a visual representation of the dilemma of Korea as a nation itself. Because I think in the past, if you know a little bit about Korean history from the ancient time till now, it seems to many people that this country exists always in the middle of power struggle. So in the ancient time, it was between Japan and China, and in the 20th century, there's war happening. There's a change of political leaders, and also in now we're in 21st century. There's a U.S. influence in the Korean Peninsula. So the state as an entity itself, political entity, it's always living in this dilemma, and it's always this a very twisted, what I would call probably a very twisted vassal state stage that the Koreans always they are having a hard time trying to fight for their identity, trying to make their voice heard. I think the director making this film is sort of a searching process of how to make their voice heard, how to depict, how to show the world what is it like to live as a Korean. And the second part of this film, I think the film basically centered around this one family. And in this family, you have different generations of Koreans. You have the grandfather, and you have who probably experienced the war, experienced a very, very chaotic time in Korean history, including the North and South Korean War, and then later on the democratization of South Korea and the economy change and all these. So he represents that spectrum of people. And then you have the dad, which is kind of the silent, I think is called, he's probably represent the silent majority of the Korean society, where nobody cares about them, nobody mentioned about them, and whatever he said, nobody cares, basically.
And he's also portrayed as somebody with how do you say that, a deficiency of understanding.
Right,
like they say, he's malnourished or some kind of words they use. Anyway, he doesn't have enough protein.
That's from the grandfather's.
That's right. Yeah.
From grandfather's perspective, and then you have the dad, and then you have the uncle. The uncle, he represents the educated. I guess the educated group. So he had a college education. In fact, his father saved from selling just selling ramen to make sure that he can go to college, get the education, get a good white collar job. But the reality is, like the uncle himself said, well, I sacrificed myself for this country's democratization, I sacrificed myself for the country's development, but I don't even get a job. So the uncle basically is jobless, and then he's very and he basically becomes an alcoholic. And then that has a very complex, I think there's a complicated backdrop history relating to the politics. And then you have the aunt, who is probably a newer generation growing up. But
She's
then
a gold medalist.
He's a gold medalist.
Gold or some medal she won
No,
from the
bronze.
archery.
Bronze
Yeah,
archery.
she doesn't get the sorry.
Archery. But archery
Yeah.
is also very Korean. It's a very symbolic Korean national sports. And then so she represents a newer generation where there are a lot of competition, right? Symbolized by her competing in the national championship. There's a lot of competition, but she has a key weakness. She is very indecisive. So at a very important key moment, she will drop. It's
Yeah.
more she will
Drop the
drop the
ball.
gun,
Yeah.
drop
Yeah.
the ball, drop
Yeah.
the gun,
Yeah.
and she will miss the target.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a key weakness that she
Yeah.
has. Is her situation that embodies the whole generation. The
Mm.
whole generation probably just like her, very grew up in a very highly competitive environment. There are a lot of pressure that they have to go through, and they themselves are very capable, but they are not. They're hesitant
Mm.
to give that full force of a push for I guess a higher level. And then you have Hyunseo, which is the kid given birth by the father. Is kind of a symbol. Sorry, I keep
Yeah.
saying symbolic.
Yeah.
A symbol for the future.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you
that's
have
true.
we see this whole stratum
Yeah.
of different generations
In that one
campaign
family.
in this one family,
Yeah.
and then they together,
Yeah.
despite their problem, there
Yeah.
are a lot of alcoholic problem, jobless, and really like bottom ordinary people in Korean society. They themselves in order to combat the monster trying to take back their child, which I guess a symbol of future, they show an incredible amount of cohesion in that one family.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's why I feel personally that it's a very, very Korean film.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I can see that particularly as we all know the director by now, Bong Joon-ho. That's the way he directs the movie too. He can create these layers of hidden layers of identities into Korean into his films and depicting something more than what we actually see in the screen. And as you talk about Korea and a theme like you mentioned, nobody is listening to me. There's a dialogue in the movie. I think it's the doctor says to this dad character,
Yes.
"Why can't you talk to
Yeah,
a
to a
TV
TV
station?" or something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that. He say, but nobody, bleeping, listen to me.
Yes.
Or something like that they say, because that becomes a theme. Nobody is really listening to their predicament, neither the government nor anybody around them, because they are all consumed by other stuff. But which could be a predicament Korea itself is facing probably. It's
Yeah.
its own struggle with South Korea and North Korea in the middle of that identity crisis itself.
Yeah.
But also to me personally, this is not necessarily part of it, but to me, one of the things really attracts me to Korean film in particular is that I'm coming from India, and so it's a Bollywood. It's another demon in itself, right? It has its own identity. Very often it's very, very colorful, very melodramatic, which is very interesting. That's my cultural proclivity towards that kind of movie. Then I ended up in the West, so I study Western film, which is more has a technical element. It's a very technical way of looking at the storytelling and all that. But to me, when I look at Korean films, it's a perfect blend of both. To me, I get enough of melodrama from which I need from my Indian film, but it's also the technical perfection. Obviously the monster, all this CGI effect may have its own problem. First of all, it's made in 2006 with a very limited budget. But the Korean film itself, to me personally, resonates with the global identities of filmmaking. And the same thing with the music too, right? K-pop
Yes.
is becoming famous. K-drama is becoming famous. So I think the Koreans are doing a very good job with what they have to make their voice really heard. With really heard, and great job. And I still, I'm a secret big fan of everything Korean in that sense too. I shouldn't have said that, but I think so. And now coming to one of the major theme, now we are recording this review in 2020, where we are fighting an invisible enemy. Now, this is one of the reasons I wanted to review this film right now, because, as the plot evolves, there is the monster. We can see the monster, obviously, but then there is another monster they are fighting, and there is this assumption that there is a virus which is associated with
The
this
monster.
And now you see all the characters wearing masks and they're disinfecting everything. And there is, this, warning that there will be cold-like, flu-like symptoms, respiration, all
Coughing
this
and
coughing.
yeah.
Yeah. How dare you don't wear the mask?
Mask,
So,
yes.
so you see, man, like this is the world today.
Yes.
Somebody created 2006, right? This movie. So, tell me, I mean, you're a health worker too. So, how does it resonate with the, again, it's a satire of today's world, the global. Now it is not a Korean film anymore. Now this is a global film at this point, right? When we talk about the virus. So, what was your take on it?
It's a very complicated. There's a plot twist as well in the film,
Sure.
where they initially say, oh, it's a virus,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
then we see that the dad getting ushered to this like military base almost,
Yeah.
and he's being used almost like a test lab monkey.
Sure, yeah.
And they try to inject different things. They measure his head and try to
I think they're trying to do lobotomy or something.
yes,
You
we're
want
trying to
his
erase the memory.
Yeah.
And and then there's this one, of course, again, American official saying that, I tell you, there is no virus.
Yeah.
There is really no virus. So, so essentially, in the movie, we
Yeah.
see that there's a physical monster where people can see
Yeah.
and trying to run away from. But there is this invisible, like you said, invisible virus getting
Yeah.
born out of this monster, which
Yeah.
did not exist,
Yeah.
and simply, it's a way, I think, for the director to show us. It's like I almost feel like it's a wildfire,
Yeah.
in the way that
Yeah.
equalized virus is to burn and show how many inequities there are in the
Yeah.
society.
Yeah.
Yeah, so relating to our own world now.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, of course, coronavirus is real.
Yeah,
It's not like
sure,
a
yeah.
human constructed idea, but there are a similar way of how this virus functions in human society as a way of showing a lot of our own iniquities. So in way that we deal with this virus in the film as
Yeah.
well as in the reality. In the film, basically the family combat this myth of
Yeah.
virus through their courage, through
Yeah.
their love for each
Yeah.
other, and the hope that
Yeah.
this Hyunseo is alive.
Yeah.
But in the reality, when we combat virus now,
Yeah.
is through our own take up our own responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, to combat this I don't know what's the right word to describe this virus, but combating this existing
Invisible
problem.
enemy. I like
yes,
the invisible enemy.
enemy. Yes.
Yeah, no, that's where this film, it jumps from Korean film to a global film to almost spiritual at that point, because it is having a conversation with us about our own nature. In a way, in this case, it's the government trying to fight fear by inciting more fear, because at the crisis and they don't know what to do.
Yes.
So it is they are creating another monster to fight this
monster.
this
Yes.
monster. There's a visible monster out there, and then to fight that, they are creating an invisible monster, and all along people are kept in the dark, which is a natural tendency. It's not just about Korea, or it's about a particular country. See, that's where I circle back to the initial remark on the monster movies in general. When I watch Jurassic Park, for example, to me, that Jurassic Park, the monster represents the monster we made of our own scientific, rationalistic worldview, without thinking about empathizing with the world, right? We think the Enlightenment paradigm, which took us to the extremes of scientific achievement, and so we have become very tunnel vision.
Right.
And in the end, we created a monster.
Right.
So it is not just about the dinosaurs, but it's about the monster that we all create, and then we end up fighting.
Yes.
At that point, it becomes very spiritual for me, right? Like, we all create our own monsters in our own life. and to fight that monster, we create more monsters, end up in that vicious circle per se. And one, to me, a redemptive scene in the movie. I don't want to give out because it's kind of a spoiler alert. But you see, at some point I was getting frustrated because people get killed one after the other,
Yes.
and I'm like, okay, where is it going to end? But then in the end, there is this, with all this murder being happening, pretty much everybody is being killed by the monster or otherwise. But at the end, even in the death of this one central character, there is a new life emerge,
Right.
because that death happens as a sacrificial act, and it's a surprise in the end. Almost one person die, but another person resurrect per se, right? There is that death and resurrection redemptive theme. So, did
Yes.
you have any reading on that, or?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. This is because when you look at the film, the progress of the event, we see the whole family tried one after another the way trying to save their trying to save Hyosung, the girl, and they keep missing the target.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
keep failing. So from the first the grandfather didn't succeed, and then the father tried getting captured by the military. Feel one point, oh my gosh, is he going to survive himself? That's the question. And then you have the uncle trying to combat the monster using a burning bottle, and then he tried to throw the last one at the monster and then failed. And then you see the aunt trying to shoot the monster and getting crushed by the monster. And then the only very last action that she did is she finally lift up her bow and shoot with decisiveness. But then still didn't kill the monster. And so you see like this whole process, like you said, like people drop one after another. There's no there's no success. But I think for me the turning point comes when you see all these seemingly futility of actions, and at one point everything just turned. Again, I think it's a you catastrophe moment when finally at this one point everything turned. But then the thing that sustained everybody's effort till the end is really this family unity in terms of this love and care, and the most important thing is the hope that sustained them, so that people can try one time, two times, three times, infinity amount of times until they reach the goal. But then when we see the end, there's a moment of sadness mixture with joy. It's almost like giving birth.
Exactly. In the death of one character, the birth of another character. And it gives us hope for what is going to happen for that family after the film. Right, so that's the most beautiful part of, for me, it becomes almost a spiritual event at that point. So we highly recommend this movie, The Host, 2006, directed by none other than Bong I knew that I'm going to mess up. Bong Joon-ho. He's very popular now, but this film, in so many ways, I liked it more than Parasite, because it talk to me in different ways, and again, it's not just a Korean film. It's a global film. It's a classic world cinema. It's an entertainer, like a monster film with special effects, but also it has a very subtle social commentary, criticism of the West, criticism of its own government, and also alluding to, which we even didn't talk about, the environmental, consciousness that we need to have, which is the crux of the film to me, in so many ways. But more importantly, the idea or the theme of redemption that comes to us and speak to us in a very, very personal way. So this is, thank you for tuning into another episode of the Mosaic film series with The Host, 2006 Korean film. And we'll come back to you more with other movies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.